and welcome back to my Lane Changer column. This one's a little different. It's entitled When a Sector Changes Lanes, ONPHA Gave Me Hope. For 30 years, the community housing sector has been parked on the shoulder of the development highway as the private sector hurtled past. We'll leave it to the market, governments said in the early 1990s when they stopped funding programs. The market did a fine job of giving us skyscraper condos and sprawling McMansion suburban communities. The lack of affordable, secure housing in Canada, however, has reached crisis proportions. This week I celebrated with 1,000 other community housing people at the annual conference hosted by the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association, ONPHA for short. Celebrated what, you ask? Have we solved the crisis? Well, no, but it was a celebration of the beginning of merging back into that developer traffic. A collective lane change, you might say. We're gonna build again. I've attended ONPHA for most of the past 15 years. As counsel to many community housing providers, I delivered workshops on human rights or other tenant-related issues, or I hung out behind a table at the trade show, ready to talk up our particular brand of lawyering. It's always been a fun but contained sort of affair, attracting housing providers, bureaucrats, policy wonks, volunteer directors, and a few private sector businesses like ours that serve the sector. In recent years, excitement came in the form of petting the dogs trained to sniff out bedbugs. This year was different, though. Toronto's Sheraton Centre buzzed with the promise of real, large-scale housing development. Some of you may be wondering if it's really been that bad. Well, yeah. The organization where I work now, the Cooperative Housing Federation of Toronto, or CHFT, developed or acquired about 2,500 units of new co-op housing in the 1980s, and another 3,000 in the first half of the 90s. Then the programs were canceled. CHFT added about 550 units in the last 30 years. An entire generation of community housing professionals, mine, has reached near retirement without any exposure to housing development. Instead, we've focused on the important and rewarding work of serving existing communities. I rang the alarm bell on rabble.ca, and you can find the link if you go to my website, in January 22, when longtime affordable housing developer John Harstone died suddenly at age 72. Although he was still working until his death, others who'd been active in the great surge of development in the 80s and early 90s had already retired or predeceased him. I worried, with Gen Xers taking a number of leadership roles, who was going to drive the development bus if we ever got funding again? Well, that time has come, or so it looks. In 2024, the federal government launched its $1.5 billion Co-op Housing Development Program, CHDP. Our sector has since filed applications to build several thousand units. Soon the CHDP, though, will be dwarfed by the promised $13 billion Build Canada Homes, or BCH, initiative. Anna Bailau, a former city councillor and deputy mayor of Toronto and a strong housing advocate, is the CEO of BCH and chose ONPHA for her first public address. She spoke of the need to bring all the stakeholders together to make housing happen: governments, nonprofits and co-ops, developers, and financial institutions. BCH will unlock programs and build capacity in the sector relying on public lands, private capital, and modern construction methods. Its priority will be shovel-ready projects, although she noted there will also be some money for pre-development supports for housing in earlier stages. The federal budget will be tabled on Tuesday, and if it passes, and I'll be part of a sector-wide breath-holding exercise on that one, BCH will release its investment policy framework later in the week. Bylaw promised the expression of interest portal will open soon after that. Toronto's Mayor Chow spoke too. Her long-time community housing advocacy has been evident since her June 23 election. Chow proudly noted she shortened approval times, reduced fees, and expanded the multi-unit residential acquisition program, a fund for nonprofits and co-ops to buy private rental buildings to keep them affordable. Her closing rallying cry, other than a bunch of Blue Jay rah-rahing, of course, was to build not just housing, but hope, a commodity in short supply during this housing crisis. ONPHA left me with a lot of hope. Some of that came from the strong messages Olivia and Anna gave that the federal and municipal governments are behind us. But it wasn't just that. Conference panels included many from the private sector, and that's new. A 10-year careerist from CMHC, now at RBC as its newly created Director of Housing Policy, sat on a panel aside municipal politicians, senior bureaucrats, and housing providers. Other panels included housing developers, community capital people, philanthropists, and a for-profit lawyer, alongside sector stalwarts. And it wasn't just those on stage who were drawn from outside the sector. Many sported first-time attendee badges, a side lanyard showing the names of their private sector employers. My worries prompted by John Harstone's death are starting to wane. Seems we're merging back into development traffic, surrounded by those who've gained private sector experience during the decades when our sector has been sidelined. It's a win-win. We can tap into their expertise, and they can stay in business despite the dried-up condo market. Thanks, ONPHA, for an uplifting 3 days. But bring back the bedbug-sniffing dogs, please. Thanks for watching.